Grace Walker sat at her small kitchen table, a warm ceramic mug cradled in her hands. The faint aroma of chamomile tea drifted through the air, though she hardly noticed. Her attention was fixed on the muffled voices coming from the living room. "I just think it's time," her daughter Emily said, her voice low but firm. "She's slowing down. The house is too big for her. What if she has a fall?" Grace's chest tightened. She didn't need to hear more. She knew what Emily was talking about, a senior living facility. Later that evening, Emily brought it up again, her tone gentle but insistent. "Mom, we're just worried. It's not about taking your independence, but you've been struggling. And Jason and I think it might be worth looking into some options. You don't have to decide right away." Grace forced a smile, her hands tightening around her fork. "I'm fine, Emily. Really. I don't need anyone to take care of me." But that night, lying in bed, the sting of Emily's words lingered. Was she struggling? Was she slowing down? Maybe she was. The aches in her joints certainly weren't getting better, and the thought of climbing the stairs made her hesitate more often than she cared to admit. Unable to sleep, she picked up her phone and scrolled aimlessly. That's when a video caught her eye. The screen showed a man, his hair snowy white, but his steps quick and steady, walking up a steep trail surrounded by vibrant greenery. His face, though weathered, glowed with vitality. Beneath the video, bold text read, "The one walking technique Japanese elders use that gives 10x benefits, after just 30 minutes. Grace clicked play. The man, speaking through a translator, explained how the Shinpo walking technique transformed his life. He claimed it improved his balance, eased his pain, and gave him energy he hadn't felt in decades, all from walking in a specific way. Grace hit replay. Then again. And again. She stared at the screen, her heart racing. Could it work? Could something so simple really change her life? The next morning, Grace sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She typed the words into the search bar, Shinpo walking technique. Dozens of articles popped up, each one promising miraculous benefit, increased mobility, reduced joint pain, and even improved mental clarity. Grace scrolled through testimonials from people in their 70s, 80s, and even 90s who swore by its effects. She scribbled notes on a piece of scrap paper. Breathe in for 4 steps, out for 4 steps. Keep shoulders relaxed. Align posture. Could it really be that simple? That afternoon, Grace dug her old sneakers out of the closet, brushed off the dust, and headed to the park. The air was crisp, and a slight breeze rustled the trees as she walked down the familiar trail. She tried to follow the instructions, her back straight, her breathing steady. But the rhythm felt clumsy, and her steps didn't quite match the pattern. Within 10 minutes, her legs ached, and her breathing was uneven. Grace sighed and sank onto a bench. Around her, joggers passed with ease, their movements fluid and confident. She felt foolish. Maybe this was a mistake. Still, as she sat there, her knees didn't feel as stiff as usual. Her body, though tired, felt lighter. When Grace woke up the next morning, she was surprised to find that her joints didn't ache quite as much as usual. She stretched her legs tentatively, waiting for the familiar stiffness, but it wasn't there. She sat up and reached for her phone, pulling up the video again. This time, she watched it with more focus, pausing to study the elder's movements. His steps were deliberate, his breathing slow and rhythmic. Grace grabbed her notepad and jotted down a list of reminders. Small, deliberate steps. Keep your weight balanced. Focus on the rhythm. She decided to try again. That afternoon, Grace returned to the park. She held her note card in one hand, glancing at it frequently. This time, she slowed down, paying attention to each step. Her back ached slightly, and her breathing didn't always sync, but she managed to walk for 15 minutes without stopping. As she rounded a bend, she nearly bumped into Tom Harris, her neighbor of 15 years. "Grace?" Tom said, raising an eyebrow. "What's this new walking style? You look like you're training for something." Grace hesitated, embarrassed. "It's called Shinpo," she explained. "It's a Japanese walking technique. Supposed to help with balance and joint pain." Tom nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I'm no stranger to walking techniques. I used to be a physical therapist, you know. If you'd like, I could walk with you sometime. Give you some pointers." Grace smiled, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. "I'd like that," she said. The next morning, Grace met Tom at the park. He greeted her with an easy smile and a small notebook of his own. "Let's see what you've got so far," he said, gesturing for her to start walking. Grace began, her steps deliberate but uneven. Tom walked beside her, observing silently. After a few minutes, he gently corrected her posture, urging her to keep her shoulders relaxed and her weight evenly distributed. "Smaller steps," he said. "Focus on balance, not speed." Gradually, Grace found a rhythm. Her breathing synced with her steps, and for the first time, the technique felt right. By the end of their walk, she was tired but exhilarated. "You're a quick learner," Tom said as they reached the parking lot. "Keep at it. You'll be amazed at what your body can do when you give it the right tools." That evening, Grace sat at her kitchen table, writing in her journal. "Today, I felt hopeful for the first time in years." Over the next several days, Grace made Shinpo walking a part of her morning routine. She woke up early, laced up her sneakers, and headed to the park, determined to improve. By the 7th day, she managed to walk for a full 30 minutes without stopping. Her breathing felt natural, her posture aligned, and her steps deliberate. That evening, Emily and her family came over for dinner. "How's Mom doing?" Jason asked as they sat down to eat. "She's great," Emily said, though her tone carried a hint of doubt. "Still, I think we should look at those senior living brochures." Grace set down her fork, her voice steady. "I don't need brochures. I've been walking every day. I feel stronger already." Emily frowned. "Walking is great, Mom, but it's not going to solve everything." Grace didn't respond. She didn't need to argue. She just needed to prove it. The next morning, Grace woke up before sunrise, her sneakers waiting by the door. She didn't just see Shinpo as an exercise anymore, it was becoming a ritual. As she walked, she focused on the sounds around her, birds chirping, leaves rustling, her breath sinking with each step. For the first time in years, she felt connected to the world around her. That evening, she started a gratitude journal, writing down 3 things she was thankful for. 1. My body, for still being strong enough to learn something new. 2. Tom, for his encouragement and guidance. 3. Shinpo, for giving me something to look forward to. As she closed the journal, she realized that Shinpo wasn't just helping her body, it was healing her spirit. Feeling more confident, Grace decided to try a steeper trail at the park. The incline was daunting, but she took it one step at a time, focusing on her breathing. Halfway up, her legs burned, and her breathing grew ragged, but she refused to quit. When she finally reached the top, she stood for a moment, catching her breath and marveling at her own perseverance. At the trailhead, an elderly couple noticed her walking style. "What's your secret?" the woman asked, smiling. Grace shared the basics of Shinpo, and the couple thanked her, promising to try it themselves. That evening, Grace called Tom to share her success. "You're inspiring people now," he said with a laugh. "Keep it up." One evening, Grace sat down with Emily to share her progress. She showed her daughter the gratitude journal and explained how much Shinpo had helped her. Emily listened, but her expression remained skeptical. "I'm glad it's helping, Mom, but what about the things you still struggle with? Carrying groceries, climbing stairs, those are harder to fix." The words stung, but Grace didn't argue. Instead, she set a new goal for herself. By the end of the month, she would conquer the steepest trail in the park. "I'll show her," Grace thought as she laced up her sneakers the next morning. "I'll show them all." Grace woke up early, laced up her sneakers, and headed to the park, her goal fresh in her mind, to conquer the steepest trail by the end of the month. The crisp morning air filled her lungs as she started her Shinpo walk, her breathing syncing naturally with her steps. Tom joined her on the trail that day, observing her technique and offering advice. "Keep your steps small and deliberate," he said. "Don't rush the incline, conserve your energy." Grace pushed herself a little further than usual, feeling the burn in her legs but also the satisfaction of progress. They stopped near a bench to rest, and Tom praised her steady improvement. As she returned home that afternoon, Grace felt a growing sense of determination. She wrote in her gratitude journal, "Today, I learned how far I've come and how much further I can go." Halfway through the month, Grace decided to reward herself for her progress. She walked into the local sporting goods store and browsed the shoe section, looking for a pair that would make her walks even more comfortable. The young salesman smiled as he approached. "Looking for walking shoes?" he asked. Grace nodded. "I'm practicing a Japanese walking technique called Shinpo. It's helping me with balance and joint pain." The salesman helped her find a pair with extra support and cushioning. As she tried them on, he commented, "Your posture is great, most people your age doesn't stand as straight as you do." Grace beamed. That small compliment was all the motivation she needed to keep going. The next morning, she tested the new shoes on her usual trail. Every step felt lighter, and her Shinpo rhythm came naturally. Grace finished her walk with a smile, writing in her gratitude journal, "Investing in myself feels amazing." Feeling confident, Grace decided to try a slightly longer trail with steeper inclines. The morning was beautiful, the sun filtering through the trees as she focused on her breathing and steps. But halfway through the trail, her foot caught on a loose branch. She stumbled, twisting her ankle painfully as she fell to the ground. A kind passerby helped her to her car, and Grace drove home in tears, her ankle throbbing. That evening, she sat in the doctor's office as he examined the injury. "It's a mild sprain," Dr. Patel said reassuringly. "You'll need to rest it for a few weeks. No walking on uneven surfaces until it heals." Grace nodded, but her heart sank. All her progress felt erased in a single moment. That night, she stared at her sneakers by the door, wondering if she'd ever put them on again. The next morning, Grace sat on her couch, her ankle propped up on a pillow. She felt defeated, the doctor's words replaying in her mind. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Tom, holding a small bag of snacks and a smile. "How's the patient?" he asked, stepping inside. Grace sighed. "I feel useless. All that progress, and now I can't even walk." Tom pulled up a chair. "You're not starting over, Grace. A setback doesn't erase everything you've learned. You can still practice parts of Shinpo breathing, posture, mindfulness. These things don't require walking. They'll keep you connected to the process." Grace mulled over his words. That evening, she sat in her chair, closed her eyes, and practiced Shinpo breathing, 4 steps in, 4 steps out. Though her body didn't move, her mind felt lighter. When she opened her gratitude journal, she wrote, "Today, I learned that progress isn't always about moving forward, it's about refusing to quit." After a week of rest, Grace's ankle began to feel better. Dr. Patel cleared her to start walking short distances on flat surfaces, and Grace cautiously laced up her sneakers. At the park, she stuck to the smooth, paved trail, keeping her steps slow and deliberate. Tom joined her, offering encouragement as she focused on rebuilding her strength. "You're doing great," he said. "Remember, it's not about how fast you go, it's about showing up every day." By the time Grace finished her walk, her ankle felt tired but not painful. She smiled to herself, realizing that even small steps counted as progress. That evening, she wrote in her journal, "I'm learning to trust my body again." Grace's confidence grew with each passing day. Her walks became slightly longer, and her Shinpo rhythm felt natural once more. One morning, she decided to return to a trail she hadn't walked since before her injury. The incline was gentle, but it felt like a victory to tackle something new again. As she reached the end of the trail, she noticed an older man sitting on a bench, struggling to tie his shoe. Grace stopped and offered to help, sharing a few tips she'd learned about supportive footwear. The man smiled and thanked her, asking, "How do you stay so active at your age?" Grace hesitated, then confidently replied, "I practice a Japanese walking technique called Shinpo. It's changed my life." That moment stayed with her all day. She wrote in her journal that evening, "Helping others reminds me how far I've come." Grace woke up one morning with a clear goal in mind: to complete her first full 30-minute walk since her injury. At the park, she focused on her breathing, her steps deliberate and steady. The trail stretched before her, and though her ankle twinged slightly, she pushed through the discomfort. Tom joined her halfway through, clapping her on the back as she neared the final stretch. "You're unstoppable, Grace," he said with a grin. When she finished, Grace felt a wave of pride. She hadn't just walked, she had conquered her doubts. That evening, she celebrated with a cup of tea and wrote in her journal, "Today, I proved to myself that I'm stronger than I thought." As the end of the month approached, Grace prepared for her biggest challenge yet, the steepest trail in the park. She spent her walks focusing on inclines, training her legs to handle the extra effort. Tom gave her tips on pacing herself, reminding her to conserve energy for the hardest parts. One day, as she practiced on a moderate hill, she noticed Emily and her family at the park. They waved, and Emily approached, her expression curious. "Training for something?" Emily asked, her tone less skeptical than before. Grace nodded. I'm walking the steepest trail next week. Want to come watch me finish it? Emily hesitated, then smiled. We'll be there. That night, Grace wrote in her journal, I'm not just proving this to myself, I'm showing my family what's possible. The day had finally arrived. Grace stood at the base of the steepest trail in the park, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. The incline looked daunting, but she reminded herself how far she had come. Tom stood beside her, offering last-minute encouragement. Remember you're breathing 4 steps in, 4 steps out. And don't rush. You've got this. Grace glanced over her shoulder to see Emily, Jason, and her 2 grandchildren standing a few feet away. Emily gave her a small wave, her face a mixture of doubt and curiosity. Taking a deep breath, Grace started walking. Her steps were slow and deliberate, her focus entirely on her breathing and posture. Every step forward felt like a victory. Halfway up, her legs burned, and her breath grew ragged, but she didn't stop. Tom followed closely, ready to catch her if she faltered, but she didn't need him. Grace pushed forward, determination driving her up the final stretch. When she reached the top, she turned around to see Emily and her family cheering. Tears welled in Grace's eyes as she realized she had done it not just for herself, but to show her family what she was capable of. That evening, Grace wrote in her gratitude journal, Today, I proved that I am stronger than I ever imagined. My now rafter of the past. The next morning, Grace woke up with sore legs but a full heart. She replayed the moment she reached the top of the trail, her family's cheers echoing in her mind. At the park later that day, she ran into the elderly couple she had met weeks earlier. They congratulated her on her accomplishment, sharing that they had started practicing Shinpo themselves. You've inspired us, the woman said. If you can do it, so can we. Grace smiled, feeling a surge of pride. She realized that her journey wasn't just about proving something to herself, it was about inspiring others to believe in their own potential. That evening, she wrote in her journal, helping others find strength in themselves is the greatest reward. With her goal accomplished, Grace settled into a new routine. Every morning, she walked the trails at the park, incorporating Shinpo into her daily life. Her walks became a source of peace and strength, a time to reflect and connect with nature. She noticed how much easier the inclines felt, how her breathing synced effortlessly with her steps. One day, Tom joined her for a walk and remarked, You look 10 years younger, Grace. Whatever you're doing, it's working. Grace laughed. It's the one walking technique Japanese elders use that gives 10x benefits after just 30 minutes, she said, jokingly repeating the title from the video that started it all. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just about Shinpo, it was about rediscovering her own strength and resilience. Emily invited Grace over for dinner one evening, eager to hear more about her journey. As they sat at the table, Grace shared the story of how she discovered Shinpo and what it had taught her. I didn't just learn how to walk differently, Grace said. I learned how to trust myself again. For years, I let my age define what I could and couldn't do. But now, I feel like I'm in control of my life again. Emily listened intently, her expression softening. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like you couldn't take care of yourself, Mom. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. Grace reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. I know, Emily. And I appreciate it. But I needed this. I needed to prove to myself that I could still grow and change. Word of Grace's success began to spread. At the senior center, a small group of women approached her, curious about Shinpo. Grace decided to host a small workshop, teaching the basics of the technique. She demonstrated the steps, the breathing, and the posture, encouraging everyone to go at their own pace. It's not about being perfect, she told them. It's about showing up for yourself every single day. By the end of the session, the group was laughing and sharing stories of their own challenges. Grace felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in years. That evening, she wrote in her journal, sharing what I've learned is as rewarding as the journey itself. One Saturday morning, Emily surprised Grace by joining her at the park. I want to try this Shinpo thing, she said, lacing up her sneakers. Grace grinned. I thought you'd never ask. They started walking together, Grace guiding Emily through the breathing and posture techniques. At first, Emily struggled to sync her steps, but Grace encouraged her to keep going. By the end of the walk, Emily was smiling. I get it now, Mom. It's not just about walking, it's about being present, isn't it? Grace nodded. Exactly. For the first time in years, Grace felt truly connected to her daughter. A month after conquering the steepest trail, Grace invited her family and friends to the park for a small celebration. The group gathered near the trailhead, enjoying a sunny afternoon together. Tom gave a short speech, praising Grace for her determination and resilience. "Grace didn't just climb a hill," he said. "She climbed out of her doubts and fears, and she showed all of us what's possible." Grace blushed but smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. Her grandchildren ran up to her, asking, "Grandma, can you teach us how to walk like you?" Grace laughed and nodded. "Of course. Let's start with small steps." Grace stood at the top of her favorite trail, gazing out at the horizon. The park stretched out before her, a place that had become her sanctuary. She thought back to the first time she'd tried Shinpo, how clumsy and uncertain she had felt. Now, every step was steady, every breath intentional. As the sun warmed her face, she felt a sense of peace and accomplishment. She didn't just feel stronger, she felt alive. Her phone buzzed with a message from Emily. "Want to walk tomorrow? I'll bring the kids." Grace smiled. She had not only reclaimed her independence but also deepened her connection with her family. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning."